Sunday feast. I hope all the technology is working and that I am visible now. But we will depend on Krishna that is the case. And I'll just chant a little Hare Krishna, which is, I was going to say very appropriate. It's always appropriate. But particularly today, because actually I was scheduled to speak last week, but for one reason or another that had to change. Excuse me. And last weekend, as well as being, and I thank Sanatan Govinda Prabhu for speaking on Krishna consciousness and Jesus. So thank you, Sanatan, for that. But last weekend also, as well as Jesus rising from the dead, it was also the appearance day of Srivas Thakur, who was an extraordinarily important personality in our tradition, in our recent tradition, and one of the absolutely key devotees in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, and one of the key confidants of Lord Chaitanya. So I'll speak a little bit about him. But first, yes, let's chant a little Hare Krishna. I was going to say join in. We can't join in as we normally do, but we join in whatever way we can. Thank you. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Pancha Tattva, 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 Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtan Ki Jai. Om Ajana Timrandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swaya Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hari 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 Rama 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 Hari Hari. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Actually, the call and response of the chanting of Hare Krishna is actually pretty crucial. Very hard to keep track when you're not hearing people responding as to whether you're on the first mantra, the second mantra, and so on like that. Anyway, we will move on. So I thought I would read, or my glasses, I thought I would read just one verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Wonderful, wonderful book, if you can see that there in the light. Glorious, describing, all the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, naturally enough, but so much philosophy, so much interesting philosophy in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So just one verse, and this is from the Madhya Lila, chapter 6, which is called The Liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And this is text 152. Sadaishvarya Purananda Vigrayan Hara Hena Bhagavane Tumi Kahanirakara Sadaishvarya Purananda Vigrayan Hara Hena Bhagavane Tumi Kahanirakara Sadaishvarya Purananda Vigrayan Hara Hena Bhagavane Tumi Kahanirakara. Sat Aishvarya Purna, with 6 opulences in full. Ananda, blissful. Vigraha, form. Yanhara, whose. Hena Bhagavane, unto that supreme personality of Godhead. To me, you. To me is spelled T-U-M-I. It sounds like to me, and the translation is you, but it's to me, T-U-M-I, and the English translation is you. Kaha, said. Nirakara, without any form. So the translation in full is, are you describing as formless that supreme personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is complete with 6 transcendental opulences? Question mark. And then Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to this verse, he says, if the supreme personality of Godhead is formless, sorry, I'm just doing something. Okay, let me see. I'll read it again, actually, just bear with me. Yeah. If the supreme personality of Godhead is formless, how can he be said to walk very fast and accept everything offered to him? Rejecting the direct meaning of the Vedic mantras, the Mayavadi philosophers interpret them and try to establish the absolute truth as formless. Actually, the Supreme Lord has an eternal personal form full of opulence. The Mayavadi philosophers try to interpret the absolute truth as being without potency. However, in the Svetasvatara Upanishad 6.8, it is clearly said, Parashaya Shaktir Vidhi Daiva Shruyate. The absolute truth has multi-potencies. Translation again. Are you describing as formless that supreme personality of Godhead whose transcendental form is complete with 6 transcendental opulences? ? And that question, by the way, is being asked by Lord Chaitanya himself. He's in a conversation with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is in effect presenting the supreme manifestation of the supreme personality of Godhead as impersonal, like that. And just before I get into it, just one very simple thing, and the Svetasvatara Upanishad is quoted here, saying that the Supreme Person has the absolute truth, or the Supreme Person has multi-potencies. And one very simple, if you're ever in a conversation with somebody who's presenting the Supreme as being impersonal, what's known as the Brahma Jyoti, or if you like, a big bright light, etc. One of the simple examples that Srila Prabhupada gave us when people would present that is that we have personality. I'm Pragosh Das, I've got a certain personality that probably gets on people's nerves sometimes. But every one of us has a personality. And every one of us has a different personality. We may have some similar traits, but we all have different personalities like that. So how is it that we, insignificant living entities who can't create a car. Cars need, big production plants with so many input from so many people, whatever. So what to speak of creating a universe, creating the entire cosmic manifestation, etc. So, our abilities are so limited. So if we have a personality, us as limited living entities have a personality, how is it that we could claim that the supreme absolute truth is devoid of personality? In other words, we have something that the supreme absolute truth doesn't have. It really makes no sense whatsoever. And actually, this is chapter 6 in the Madhya Lila, the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. If you read it, the whole chapter, you will see that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and hence the title, he becomes liberated, he accepts in the end, even though he very much was arguing, he then accepts that he is wrong and that the Supreme Person has a personality like that. So our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy is strongly critical of Mayavad philosophy. Again, one reason being, as I've expressed, but in addition to that, the argument of the Mayavadis is that when we die, when we leave our bodies, we merge into this Brahma Jyoti. We merge in it. And by us merging into it, we effectively become God ourselves. So that's one of the reasons why, because it's a very arrogant, puffed up philosophy that we think that we are actually God in that sense. So yeah, the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy is very critical of Mayavad philosophy, and in essence the theory that all variety and all individuality, they're illusion. And also strongly critical of the Advaitavada theory, which is that the only truth is impersonal and undifferentiated oneness. So as devotees, we know, and we do not say that God is devoid of an impersonal feature, and that's a very important point. It's not that we say God doesn't have an impersonal feature. Absolutely God has an impersonal feature, or the Supreme has an impersonal feature. The Vaishnava position simply is that is not a complete vision or understanding of the reality, as well as that impersonal feature, that the Supreme Person also has a personal feature that is superior to that impersonal feature. Just like if you are going to work or something and the postman is coming, with some, I don't know, parcel or something like that, you may write a note and stick it on the door and tell him to leave it with the neighbor or something like that. Sorry, someone was just sending me a message. I thought it was someone telling me that the technology's not working, but it's not, it's something different. Yeah, so you're leaving for work and there'll be nobody in your house. So you write a little note for the postman and you put it on the door and you say, oh, please leave it with the neighbor. I've made arrangements with them or whatever. So that note is an impersonal aspect of you, because the postman comes, that doesn't see you, but sees your note. So if you like, that note is kind of like an impersonal manifestation of you. So yes, the Supreme Person has an impersonal feature, but it's not the highest manifestation of the absolute truth. And in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, verse 5, it's stated, klesho dika tarastesham. And it's basically saying that following the path of impersonalism or Mayavad or Advaitavad, they are extremely difficult paths, if not impossible paths, to make spiritual progress on like that. So they're very, very difficult and very, very challenging. So many points can be made in arguing against the case for Mayavad or Advaitavad like that. And one of them is that according to those theories, the ultimate reality is supposedly pure, undifferentiated oneness. Now, with all variety and individuality being products of illusion, that's what they say, all variety and all it's illusion. It doesn't exist in essence. However, if we were to accept that view, we would logically have to ask, well, where does the illusion come from? And that's a question that the proponents of Mayavad and Advaitavad philosophy have so far failed to answer. So, one might conclude that they cannot answer that question. It's been put to them many times over the millennia. So if only oneness exists, then illusion cannot exist, or cannot also exist. Because then you would have two-ness, and that means duality, not oneness. So if we say that two-ness only seems to exist, and that its existence is but an illusion, then we're back to where we started and we're literally going around in a circle like that. I think I've mentioned this before when speaking at Sunday programs in Dublin, but it kind of ties into what we're discussing now. But some years ago I read a scientific paper, and the scientific paper was from, it was a group of scientists, eminent scientists like that, and this was their conclusion on the creation of the universe. So, it was a paper they worked on for a long time, and it wasn't just one person, it was many persons, and so it was a kind of combined thing like that. And their conclusion was that the universe, and from the fireball of the Big Bang, that's the theory that they have, that there was a Big Bang. Of course, they never explain, by the way, where the gases came from to create that Big Bang. But anyway, that's their philosophy. And they say that essentially the cosmos that we now inhabit, it popped into existence out of nothing at all. To some degree, that does answer the point about the gases, that it came from nothing. It just popped into existence out of nothing like that. And they say, though, that it had to happen because nothing is inherently unstable. Now, I don't know if you knew that nothing is inherently unstable, but according to these scientists, nothing is unstable. The nature of nothing now, for a simple person, nothing is nothing, it's nothing. But they're saying no, the constitution, for want of a better word, of nothing is that it's unstable. And because it's unstable, something had to come from it. And what came from it was this entire cosmic manifestation that we see all around. We don't see it all, of course. We see a tiny fraction of it because it's so ginormous. But that came from nothing. And the reason it came from nothing is because nothing is unstable. That instability created the Big Bang, etc., and everything came from that. It's also interesting, I read just 2 weeks ago, I think it was, very recently, that the scientists, particularly in terms of physics, they've concluded, apparently there were 4 great, powers or energies or dynamics that are responsible for the creation, etc., of the universe. And they've now concluded that actually that isn't sufficient, and that wouldn't be enough to create and maintain the entire creation. So therefore they've decided there's actually 5. They haven't determined exactly what it is, etc., etc., but they've determined that they are now. And the phrase they used was, we now have to go back to the drawing board. And this is one of the key things about proponents of particularly atheism, where they say there is no energy, power, personality, designer, etc. behind the creation, that they're always, repositioning the goalposts. Now they have to go back to the drawing board. Oh, great. So everything you said before now that you told us was, so correct and so, so intelligent and so well researched, etc. Now you tell us, no, we go back to the drawing board and we have to start effectively, if not from square 1, from square 2 or 3 or whatever it may be. So that's a fundamental problem, that why should we accept you as an authority when you're changing your conclusion based on new evidence that you discover like that? Who knows how much other evidence is out there for you yet to discover? I was hoping, by the way, when I read that they said there was a 5th force or a 5th energy. I was thinking, wow, are they going to say that it's, metaphysical, spiritual, is it a supreme person? But unfortunately, not yet. They haven't came to that conclusion. So Lord Chaitanya, in response to the Mayavada, Vedavad philosophy, he taught the doctrine that while everything is one with the absolute truth, it's simultaneously inconceivably different from the absolute truth as well. And that philosophy is known as the philosophy of Achinta-bheda, abheda tattva. And just as the sunshine is both one with and different from the sun, within the personality of Godhead, everything that appears to be irreconcilable can be easily reconciled. So the personality of Godhead, the supreme reality, has countless energies, and they are all real, including the energy that places us under illusion, when illusion is what we desire. It's not that God forces us into illusion, forces us under illusion. No, we desire illusion, and there's reasons for that, which we can talk about again. But that desire that we have, then Krishna makes that arrangement for us. That, okay, you want that, then okay, because ultimately Krishna will fulfill all desires. So if that's a desire that we have, Krishna fulfills it like that. So also in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter, 7:14, the Devi Yesha Guna Mayi verse, that although this illusory energy is effectively insurmountable, to get out of this illusion that we're in, it's effectively impossible, insurmountable. One who takes shelter of the person who created it for us, but the person who created it, one who takes shelter of that person, then they can easily is the word used, cross beyond it. I think in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says it's as easy as a cow stepping over a little puddle of water of their own footprint. So you can just imagine how easy that is for a cow to step over. So even though it's insurmountable on our own, once we take shelter of Krishna, then it becomes easy to cross over. So therefore, the Hare Krishna movement is strongly teaching, strongly encouraging people to take shelter of Krishna in preference to all other speculative theories, and particularly theories in relation to impersonalism, voidism, etc., etc. And just to reflect back to last week, being Jesus, Jesus one time said, he said, blissful are those who believe without seeing. And then he didn't say this, but the kind of corollary of that is that as opposed to the material concept of seeing is believing, like that. So taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead makes everything very, very easy instead of trying to. Prabhupada told us that there's 2 ways to acquire knowledge. There's the ascending process and there's the descending process, like that. And the ascending process is very, very hard. Just, you look at the universes and all we can see of them. Can you just imagine? We're so tiny, yet we're trying to figure out the origin of all of this and where it came from. It's like, wow, where do you start? Where do you start? Sometimes I don't know, you've got a to-do list, and you look at it and it's like really, really long. And some of them are quite complicated. You have to do maybe some research on stuff and this and that. And sometimes the mind thinks, oh God, I just want to go back to bed and forget about it all. It becomes like really challenging. So what to speak of trying to figure out, you look up at the sky at night and see these billions of stars, etc. And now I'm going to try and figure out where this all came from. All the time. It's just so much easier to take shelter of the person who has the knowledge. So the ascending process, very difficult. The descending process, very easily. And the example that Srila Prabhupada gives us is that if you're born and you've never known your father, maybe he died, or maybe he left your mother or whatever before you were even born, or when you were a tiny, tiny baby, and you've no idea who your father is, you can walk around. I think there's somewhere in the region of, 3.5, thereabouts, billion men on the planet. You can walk around the whole planet and you can ask every one of those 3.5 billion men, are you my father? Are you my father? Actually, even if you happen to find the one who is, you might not want to admit it. But anyway, the chances of you finding him are like literally, even to say a needle in a haystack would be misleading. It's just never going to happen. But of course, you can just turn to your mother and you can say, Mum, who's my dad? And she will know, or at least she should know. But she will know. So that descending process of knowledge, going to somebody who already knows the answer rather than trying to figure it out yourself, simple, easy life, no? To do it that way. So that's why the Hare Krishna movement really encourages surrender to and taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in the context of Srivas Thakur and it being his appearance day last week, I'll just speak a little bit on Srivas Thakur. I think I've got about 20 minutes left. So in our Gaudiya Vaishnava theology, there are 5 conscious elements of, or what we call the 5 truths. And anyone who's been to our centre in Dublin, they'll know that the 5 truths, the Sanskrit phrase for that is pancha tattva. Pancha means 5, tattva means truth, the 5 truths. And those 5 truths are the primal God, the first expansion of God that is governing spirituality, the second expansion of God that effectively governs the material manifestation, then an expansion of his spiritual Shakti, which is described as being effectively the feminine aspect of God. And then finally, a manifestation of the Jiva, or the spiritual beings like us, the individual spirit souls. So those 5 conscious elements manifested in the spiritual realm, they are Lord Kṛṣṇa, Lord Balaram, his brother. So Lord Kṛṣṇa is the primal God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Balaram is his first expansion that governs the whole spiritual manifestation. Then there's Mahavishnu, who is governing the whole material manifestation. Then we have Srimati Radharani, who is his spiritual Shakti, spiritual potency, and the feminine aspect of God. And then perfected souls like Narada Muni, like that. And of course, Srivas Thakur is an incarnation of Narada Muni in the manifestation of the Panchatattva. So here in the material realm, the most recent manifestation of those 5 principles, Krishna, Balaram, etc., appearing as devotees here in the material world. Sri Krishna appeared as Lord Chaitanya. Lord Balaram has appeared as his brother, Lord Nityananda. Mahavishnu appeared as Advaita Acharya. And Srimati Radharani appeared as Gadadhar Pandit. And then, as I said, Narada Muni appeared as Srivas Pandit. So that's the Panchatattva. The Panchatattva is, and we sing like that, it's Lord Chaitanya, but we sing Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Then it's Lord Balaram in the form of Lord Nityananda. It's Mahavishnu in the form of Advaita Acharya. It's Srimati Radharani in the form of Gadadhar Pandit. And it's Narada Muni in the form of Srivas Thakur. So Srivas is representing the pure jivas who dedicate their lives to serving the Lord in the mood of ahoitakiya pratihata, which simply means without any motivation. So the service is free from any motivation. Everything we see in the material world, every service that's done, if you like, every job that's done, there is some motivation. To get money or this or that, whatever it may be, there's some motivation. But this service to Krishna that the devotees like Srivas Thakur engage in, completely unmotivated. There is zero motivation. And then there is also no interruption to it. It's constant. It's not the, oh, one day, okay, I'll do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll serve you, Krishna. And then, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'll serve, you know, I don't know, something else. And then Sunday, I don't know what I'll do. But no, there's no interruption. It's like they serve Krishna constantly like that. So Srivas Pandit is representing in that sense the marginal living entity, of which we're in that category, the tatastha jiva, or the marginal jivas. And they're described, those devotees are described by Lord Chaitanya actually as Lord Chaitanya's smaller limbs, all taking part in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. But actually without them, Lord Chaitanya could not perform his Sankirtan mission, his Sankirtan movement. There's one nice verse, I've forgotten it now, I've forgotten the Bengali, but it's simply saying, Lord Chaitanya is simply saying, you know, alone I cannot do this. I cannot do this on my own. I need the help of my devotees like that. So it's devotees like Srivas Thakur and ourselves, you know, and Lord Chaitanya accepts our service even if it isn't ahoitakiya pratihata. He still accepts our service like that. So we're all helping. And ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the Hare Krishna movement, is very much a branch of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan tree like that. So Srivas was one of the most important personalities who assisted Lord Chaitanya with his pastimes, and he graced the Astami Titi in the month of Chaitra, and that Astami, this is the month of Chaitra, but the Astami Titi was 1 week ago, appearing 1 week ago actually, in the material world for the benefit of all conditioned souls. He's representing us all, and he's trying to encourage us and pull us more and more into the service of the pure service of Lord Chaitanya. And it's really interesting because without his mercy, the Hare Krishna mantra, I was just looking at the video yesterday of the devotees on Harinam in Dublin, that would never have happened. Those Harinams would never happen. Me chanting Hare Krishna earlier on the harmonium, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for Srivas Thakur, because the Sankirtan movement started obviously with Lord Chaitanya, but very much Srivas Thakur was central to the origins of the Sankirtan movement 525, 530 years ago, when Lord Chaitanya appeared in Navadvip in West Bengal. And all of these, Srivas Thakur, his home is known as Srivas Angam. Many of you, I'm sure, have been there. That was the headquarters of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. And that's where they started the congregational chanting of the holy name, these incredible, spiritually potent kirtans that started in Srivas Thakur's home, where every single night for a year, Lord Chaitanya would gather with his companions in Srivas's courtyard behind closed doors. There was two aspects to this. One was the kind of internal rare kirtans that were taking place just with Lord Chaitanya's pure devotees in Srivas Thakur's home, like that. And then, of course, there was the public chanting outside, Sankirtan outside, for the benefit of all the conditioned souls, all the fallen souls. So they would chant in Srivas's courtyard behind closed doors, and they were experiencing, you know, the highest ecstasy that is possible to experience, either in the material or the spiritual worlds indeed. It was during those pastimes where Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya came as a devotee, he came as a devotee, and he always presented himself as a devotee. That was a unique aspect of this particular incarnation of Krishna, always presenting himself as a devotee. But in the privacy and the sanctity and the purity of these special kirtans in Srivas Angam, just with his very, very dear pure devotees, Lord Chaitanya actually revealed to those devotees, and particularly Srivas, that he was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when he did that, it's described for 21 hours, non-stop, Srivas and his associates blissfully performed kirtan. 21 hours non-stop, worshipping Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya was sitting on a shringasan, you know, like the deities stand on a shringasan. Lord Chaitanya was sitting on a shringasan on the deity altar, So that here they were, you know, this was you know, the boy that grew up as Nimai Pandit. Now he was manifesting himself as non-different than Krishna, non-different than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And these devotees were just in ecstasy, chanting Hare Krishna and worshipping him as he's sitting on the deity altar like that. But other than that, Lord Chaitanya exclusively focused on himself in the role of being a devotee. Except for that pastime that I've just described. And that pastime is known as the Mahaprakash Leela. So unique, so amazing like that. So as I've said, Srivas Thakur is incarnation of Narada Muni, and it was through Srivas that Lord Chaitanya taught how he's conquered by love, by the love of his devotee. That's how he's conquered. And it was really emphasized that anybody who can you know, render loving devotional service to Lord Chaitanya will conquer his heart. Srivas Thakur did it many times. One example was when Lord Chaitanya was very young. As I mentioned, he was known as Nimai, but he was a very intelligent. I mean, he's Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and he was very intelligent. One time there was in those days it wasn't so much football matches that people and gather and you know, be really excited about. It would be philosophical, theological debates that would take place, and the great you know, pandits and the great scholars and like that would assemble, and there was rules to these debates, etc. and whatever, and they would debate, and then a winner would be declared. And one of those great debaters was a personality called Keshava Kashmiri, and there's 4 main seats of learning in India, one in the east, west, south, and the north, and the one in the north actually is Navadvip. And Keshava Kashmiri had conquered the one in the east, the west, and the south. He just needed, and he had an umbrella apparently that had 4 segments to it. And the segments, I think they were golden when you had conquered. I think the segment was turned. You made it gold or gold color. So he had 3 golden segments, and there was just one still missing. And he just needed to win the debate in Navadvip. So he went there, and all the Brahmins, all the pandits in Navadvip were all scared to take him on. It was like Kashmiri, like that. So they decided to push Nimai forward. Nimai was just how old was Nimai at the time? I think was he 12, I think, something. I'm not 100% sure on that, actually. I'd have to check. But he was a young boy, basically. But they were all scared of him, so they put Nimai forward to take on Keshava Kashmiri. And Nimai defeated him. And Keshava Kashmiri initially was so distraught because he didn't get his last segment on his umbrella. But then ultimately he also took shelter of Lord Chaitanya, and he became a great devotee like that. And he wasn't frustrated anymore. But then when that happened, and similar things happened like that, Srivas Thakur, at one point, he was thinking that Nimai was maybe becoming a little puffed up. So Nimai Pandit one day challenged Lord Chaitanya, kind of asked him challenging questions. He was saying, you know, why do people study? So that they might understand what is devotion to Lord Kṛṣṇa. However, if by scholarship one doesn't gain that devotion to Lord Kṛṣṇa, then how will that learning or that scholarship, how will that help them? It will become simply a burden, a tedious endeavor, of which, you know, there's no end, or the end is nothing but a waste of time, like that. You won't achieve that devotion to Lord Kṛṣṇa. So if you've actually learned something, then begin your worship of Lord Kṛṣṇa now. That is the purpose of life. That is the purpose of your life. And when Nimai heard that, he started laughing and said, it's by your mercy that certainly will come to pass. If you're kind enough, this is what he's speaking to Srivas Pandit, Srivas Thakur. If you're kind enough to me, then I'll definitely attain devotion to Lord Sri Krishna's lotus feet. So this was the relationship that he had with Nimai Pandit. Shortly after that, and as a result of that point that was being made by Srivas Thakur, that we always should remain humble, Lord Chaitanya, Supreme Personality of Godhead, he travelled to Gaya, where he took initiation from his spiritual master, Ishvara Puri. And he did that to show that without the blessings of great souls, without the prayers of great devotees petitioning on our behalf, petitioning Krishna on our behalf to shower us with mercy, there's actually little hope of us receiving the mercy of Krishna. We can't do it on our own. And Krishna's not interested in that sense, in how intelligent we are or how knowledgeable we are. He's interested in our heart, in our love for him, our devotion for him. A little bit like the point, making about the scientists, that they'll try to figure out how the universe works, because they think they're intelligent and they really like taking shelter in their intelligence. But, ultimately that's a waste of time, and taking shelter in Krishna is the goal of life. After that, taking initiation from Ishvara Puri, considerable time later, that very mercy was bestowed also on Srivas himself by Lord Chaitanya during one of those ecstatic kirtans in his house, because one night during those kirtans, Srivas Thakur's son, he had a fever and left his body, he died. And when Srivas became aware of that, he went into his son's room and he found him lying dead on the bed like that, and there were different personalities present, his mother, Srivas Thakur's wife, etc., and some other family and friends, and he told them to stop crying, and he said that there's no grief, there should be no grief, as even a most sinful person, of which his son wasn't, but even a most sinful person, if they die hearing the holy name, they will be liberated. The power of the holy name, they will be liberated. So he said his son was just so fortunate to leave his body in that environment, this incredible protected environment where Lord Chaitanya and his dear most pure devotees are chanting Hare Krishna. How fortunate can you be? We all have to leave these bodies. In that sense, death, whether we die young, middle-aged, old, whatever it may be, we all have to die. It's like, you're in an airport waiting for your plane. You may get to the airport early. Other people, their flights, you'll see them on the board. That flight is about to take off, then the next one, and then your one is way down here. You've got a few hours to wait. But ultimately, that doesn't matter. You're going too, So death is like that. There's people dying right now at this very moment. Many thousands on the planet dying at this very, very moment. Our turn. We're in the queue like that. So death is inevitable. So rather than lamenting about it, the much more positive outlook is, if you die in an auspicious situation, and what more auspicious situation could there be here than the situation for Srivas Thakur's son, then hey, that's glorious. That's just such a wonderful thing. So he asked them not to cry, and also not to tell anyone that this had happened, because he didn't want to interfere with the ecstatic and pure mood that was taking place at that time in his house. He even threatened them that, if they do tell Lord Chaitanya and disturb the kirtans, that he'll put a weight around his neck and he'll jump in the Ganga, the Ganges, and commit suicide like that. So Srivas then went back into the kirtan with a big smile and started dancing with Lord Chaitanya and the other devotees, and the kirtan continued throughout the whole night. But eventually Lord Chaitanya did come to know that Srivas Thakur's son had passed away, and then he cried tears of love and said how he could never leave the association of such a pure devotee as Srivas, because he said that Srivas loves him so much that he did not even express grief at the death of his own son. So, for all of us who are married and have children, or for that matter, all of us who are not married and have children, but just having children, we know only too well how incredible that realization is, because we're attached to our family members. And, in one sense you can say rightly so, but always we should see it in context. That's kind of the main point. But that was just an amazing pastimes, that involves Srivas and the trials and tribulations that, we all have to go through. I'm just looking at the time, 4:20. I think I guess can speak for another 10 minutes and finish at 4:30. Another pastime of Srivas was that, because he would lock the doors of his house during the kirtans, some people would become angry, feeling that they're being excluded. They also weren't, they didn't know really what was going on actually, etc. But anyway, because he locked his doors, some people were feeling annoyed with that or upset with that. And one time, one of those personalities, even though they're described as a non-believer, a pasandi like that, so they wouldn't have really been interested in what was going on inside, although no doubt if they had exposed themselves to it, they would have become purified very quickly. But anyway, they were just upset as well. So what they decided to do, this personality, Gopal Chapala was his name, was that he assembled all the paraphernalia for worshipping the goddess Bhavani or goddess Durga, which is very big actually in West Bengal. And he placed that paraphernalia outside Srivas Thakur along with a big pot of wine to defame him. Because obviously as a devotee, things like wine and such things like that, they're repugnant, that devotees don't engage in those things. So it was to defame Srivas like that. So when Srivas saw that paraphernalia in the morning, when he opened his doors and he saw that paraphernalia was there, he immediately called for all the respectable gentlemen of the neighborhood and said to them, just see, here's the paraphernalia for the worship of Durga. And every night I worship the goddess Durga. Now you're all respectable gentlemen, you can understand my actual position, who I really am. So please take whatever action that you deem fit. Which is also a good example, this, because, we should always be confident in our activities, and whatever other people may think or say, we are the ones who know what the reality is and what the truth is. So we should never feel we have to be defensive or clever or cunning like that. We know what the truth is, and if someone is speaking lies, then we don't need to be afraid of that. So Srivas really went up front and said, here you go, look, this is what I'm doing, so do with me whatever you can. But of course those respectable Brahmins and leaders, they understood what had happened, and they knew Srivas Thakur wasn't into that kind of thing. And obviously some envious person had wanted to defame him and desecrate his house, etc. So they simply called for a cleaner to come and remove all of the untouchable things and purify the place by actually mopping it with a mixture of cow dung and water. Oh gosh, it always reminds me of a story. Because cow dung is pure. It's really interesting. If you're out in nature and you get a cut or something, one of the best things you can do is put it in cow dung, and the antiseptic qualities of cow dung will prevent infection. I think that's generally understood now. Generally understood, certainly understood by people who've studied it, that there are incredible antiseptic qualities in cow dung. But of course, it's dung. So for most people, your average person, you never associate something that comes out of somebody's backside, some creature's backside, as being, pure or clean like that. But the story I remember is that they were opening a restaurant, I won't say where, but they were opening the Govinda's restaurant in one place in Europe. And one devotee decided the day before they opened, after they'd cleaned and done everything really, really nicely, he then just decided that the best thing that he could do now would be to do another clean, this time same thing with water and some cow dung to really purify the whole place. So he did that, and that was fine, everyone was done. About a week later or something, which is quite common when you first open a restaurant, a health inspector will come and he will just sort of check, or she will check, just to see how things are and is everything okay. And he came in, checked, all very happy, and was about to leave. And the devotees were thanking him for his check and his appreciation that the place was pretty good. And this devotee who'd done that cleaning with the cow dung, he then piped up and said, yeah, we were always really confident everything would be okay because we made it so clean and so pure, because the very last thing we did was we cleaned it all with a mixture of water and cow dung. And of course, when the health inspector heard that, he told him, okay, that's it, close the doors have to be locked and it has to be all redone again, whatever like that. So it's kind of, just So anyway, the leaders of the community, they told him to come and clear the place and clean it and get it all sorted like that. And then just a matter of 3 days after that event, this personality, Gopala Chapal, or Gopal Chapala, I think is the proper way to say it, he became affected by leprosy, and blood was oozing from sores all over his body, being attacked by germs, insects, etc. So it's very, very interesting that the position of a devotee is such that, and this is so instructive for all of us, that people who chant Hare Krishna, people who engage in Krishna's service like that we should never criticize them, and certainly we should never set them up for something that they didn't do. I mean, how outrageous to do that to anybody, but particularly to a devotee of Krishna. And and it's described as, you know, to offend a devotee is like the mad elephant offense, you know, that if you put an elephant in a confined space, the elephant will just trample over everything and destroy everything like that. So you kind of destroy your life, you know, by offending a devotee. And here was an example of it, that Gopal Chapala was doing that, and literally within a matter of days, he got an incredibly strong reaction. And, you know, and he appealed, Gopal Chapala appealed to Lord Chaitanya, saying, you know, you're an incarnation of God, you've come to deliver the fallen souls, I'm very fallen and wretched, so please deliver me. And it's interesting, in that particular pastime, Prabhupada explains that Lord Chaitanya did come to deliver everybody, but not from any particular condition, and certainly not from any particular material condition. When Lord Chaitanya came to deliver everybody, he came to deliver them from material existence like that, not from any specific reaction to material existence, but just entirely from material existence. The so-called, you know, bad aspects of it, you know, but also the good, so-called good. There are no good aspects really if you analyze it, but you know, it's kind of the difference between, so somebody getting leprosy, and then somebody, say, winning the lotto and winning, I don't know, 10 million euros or something like that. So externally we look at that and we think how unfortunate this person has this terrible disease, but how fortunate these people are who have won so much money or something like that. But from an absolute perspective, there's no difference between, Prabhupada used to have this incredible phrase, talking about dung again, Prabhupada had this incredible phrase, he used to say, wet stool, dry stool. The tendency is to think of wet stool as being worse than dry stool, because wet stool is smelly and, you know, and whatever, and can spread over, whatever, you know. Whereas dry stool, a cow, if you talk about cow stool again, you know, when a cow patty dries up, it's like, you know, it's like a frisbee. You know, it's like you don't get anything from it. It's all dry, and actually it's very useful. You can use it as fuel and so many different things. But Prabhupada said, no, that's material consciousness, wet stool, dry stool. You know, ultimately there's no good or bad. If it's material, it's material. So Lord Chaitanya, he came to free everybody from material existence, not from any particular condition like that. Okay, that's 4:28. I think I should stop here because there's another part to the program, I think, hearty now. So nice to be here with you today. And just appreciate you allowing me to present both some aspects of the Krishna conscious philosophy and specifically today some glorification of Srivas Pandit, Srivas Thakur. But please do more reading on Srivas Thakur or Srivas Pandit, because there's so many more blissful pastimes that will really inspire and enthuse us in Krishna consciousness and the service of Krishna. Okay, thank you all very much. And as ever, thank you so much to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada for coming to the West in 1965, 1966, establishing this incredible movement to offer and to facilitate everyone the opportunity to engage in Krishna service. Without him doing that, none of us would be here today, and I certainly wouldn't be here speaking on these incredible subject matters like Srivas Thakur's pastimes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.